Stay with me, Paris, because a presidential visit comes on the same day 3 law enforcement officers are targeted. So with the spike in violence, will reinforcements follow Biden's visit? Our Spotlight Politics team weighs in. Here with that and more are WTTW News reporter Matt Masterson, who has been covering the city's violence, along with the usual suspects, Heather Sharon, Amanda Vinicky, and Paris Schutz. Welcome, everyone. So as we just heard, President Biden was in the predominantly Republican enclave of Crystal Lake today, where Amanda still is. He's selling his American Families Plan at McHenry Community College. Take a look.
Democracy can deliver. The people of Illinois and the people of America and the world can lead again. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I know that's a boring speech, but it's an important speech. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Amanda, is this the best way to sell it?
Boring but important. I think perhaps what he means by that is that this was a very policy-focused speech. So I don't know if he was, trying to rib his speechwriter or something and say, hey, give me a zinger. But that really isn't the president's mode. I mean, that wasn't how he got to the White House this time around. He played it fairly safe. I would say his challenge, or what I'm guessing he hoped at the very least that his speech would do, would be that even if perhaps it sounded boring, perhaps particularly in comparison to his predecessor, that the American people would grab onto some of the promises that he made. Things like, okay, childcare, that's really expensive. It's tough to find. One of the reasons that Democrats in particular have said that people are not going back to work, in addition to fears of COVID, and Republicans would add to that, I think, as well, the stimulus package that is keeping people from going back to work. So that he's hoping people will grab onto those sort of things. Free education, helping out with putting more money into their pockets.
Heather, the mayor and the Cook County president, Tony Preckwinkle, they greeted him at the airport, but then the mayor reportedly, pushed him on assistance with the city's violence. Does that make a difference, really, to put a bug in the president's ear for just a couple of minutes, really?
So probably not. Lori Lightfoot and Joe Biden have been aligned on this issue since the very beginning of the campaign. Lori Lightfoot endorsed Joe Biden during the primaries. So they're on the same page. They agree that Chicago needs federal help in prosecuting gun traffickers. I think what was most important about today were those pictures of Lori Lightfoot on the tarmac, shaking the president's hand, talking to the president, and clearly having a path to get to the White House, which is something that the Chicago mayor hasn't enjoyed for about 4 years now.
And Paris, obviously, we heard from Congresswoman Lauren Underwood earlier in Amanda's story. She was also at the college because this, of course, is in her district. Is this a boost for her reelection that the president chose to go there and not here in Chicago?
Well, yeah, when we first heard the announcement, we're thinking, why Crystal Lake, Illinois, of all places? But that has to have something to do with it, the political considerations, because Biden and Democrats are going to be up against very difficult midterms in 2022. Traditionally, in an off-election year, the party not in power does better. Plus, Republicans in balance are going to benefit from the remap. So Lauren Underwood barely won her district. It's one of those purple districts that flipped from Republican to Democrat in the last 4 years. And it's one that if Democrats want to keep the House, they're going to have to retain a district like Lauren Underwood's. So I have to imagine that the political folks involved had recommended this district as a way for the president to try and help his party retain control of the House in 2022.
Heather, we also know Mayor Lori Lightfoot, after that meeting, she didn't stick around for the rest of the event. She hopped on a plane to San Francisco for a tech summit. Is she, getting out of town so she can talk about something that's not violence?
I'm sure she relishes the chance to showcase Chicago's burgeoning tech community. We expect to hear from her in the next couple of days about what she's finding out there in San Francisco. And this is part of sort of the double step that she's got to do as mayor. She's got to address the conditions on the ground, on the streets in Chicago, but she's also got to be a booster for Chicago and convince companies to come to Chicago. She, like Rahm Emanuel, has been very proud of the number of companies that have relocated relocated to Chicago even during the pandemic. And this is part of that sort of boosterism diplomacy to sort of keep building up Chicago's economy, because part of her argument is that the way to stop crime is to provide jobs. And this is one way to sort of push that forward.
Now, speaking of summer violence, Police Superintendent David Brown held a press conference earlier today about the latest shooting of a Chicago police officer, as well as two ATF, alcohol, tobacco, firearms agents. Matt, we know that Superintendent Brown didn't give us a whole lot of details or a lot of information about that shooting, but he did talk about how many officers have been shot or shot at this year. Is he saying it's a spike, it's a trend? What's he saying?
It certainly appears to be more of a trend. He's been talking about this on a weekly basis going back since he began his tenure last year. And last year, 2020, was a historically high year for officers being shot at or shot. David Brown's department said that it was up about 550%, the amount of shootings at police officers in 2020 compared to 5 years earlier. And this year isn't that much different than last year. Last year, there were about 79 officers who were shot at, and 10 of those were struck. This year, through a little more than halfway of the year, we're at about 36 officers who have been shot at. And I believe after today's shooting, we're at 8 or 9 of them have been shot. So the numbers, again, are on pace to match what was a historically high year. And that also includes another CPD commander and a sergeant who were also shot over the holiday weekend.
That's a big jump. Now, you know, these law enforcement agents are the latest who were hurt. Some might even say they were targeted. We've talked a lot this week about the 100 people who were shot over the holiday weekend, Matt. How effective is CPD's all hands on deck, you know, whole government strategy? How's that working?
City officials were very quick to throw praise at this after the Memorial Day weekend when they launched this all government approach, because that holiday weekend had a 10-year low in violence. But you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who's calling it a success after the weekend that we just had, the 4th of July. It was the single most violent weekend of this year, and one of the most violent 4th of July weekends that we've had over the last decade. So this government approach, it's supposed to have more city departments beyond just the Chicago Police Department who are addressing violence. But Superintendent David Brown has consistently pointed the finger at the courts, at State's Attorney Kim Foxx, for letting violent offenders back out on the street. We just heard what Kim Foxx had to say about this, and there's some who say that argument doesn't hold much water, that it's these people out on electronic monitoring who are reoffending. But certainly after a weekend where over 100 people are shot, we're going to hear more and more calls that the police department and the city and other departments need to be doing more to address violence. Right.
We just heard from State's Attorney Kim Foxx, as well as Public Defender Sharon Mitchell. Tomorrow night, as we mentioned, we'll be hearing from Circuit Court Chief Judge Tim Evans. Heather, you know, are these claims legit, false?
No, they're not. We heard from Tim Evans, spokesperson, who said that it's really only 16 people who have been charged with murder that have been let out on electronic monitoring, and that a small fraction, literally 1%, have reoffended. So that's not what's driving the surge in crime. And I think that, you know, people are getting frustrated that David Brown has been presented with these figures and he has dismissed them. He has said, look, I don't believe them. And that has really sort of ground the conversation to a halt, because it's difficult to sort of have a policy discussion when one person dismisses the evidence in front of them. And I think that, you know, we saw last Friday, the city council was very frustrated with the superintendent. The question is, does the violence continue to surge this summer in Chicago? And does that imperil Brown's position as Mayor Lightfoot comes under increasing pressure to do something to stop the bloodshed?
Now, it wouldn't be a spotlight without talking about a little bit of corruption at City Hall. And since our last spotlight, another alderperson was indicted, this time 34th Ward Alderman Carrie Austin and her chief of staff. This makes 3 active city council members who are under indictment. Heather, what is the latest?
Well, Carrie Austin has not resigned. She has no plans to resign. She was participating in a finance committee meeting today. She is charged with taking kickbacks, essentially, from a developer in her ward, and including in those kickbacks were granite countertops, a fancy sump pump, and some nice bathroom tiles. So you can't script this, but it is another black eye, and I've yet to get a response from the mayor about whether she will ask Carrie Austin to step down as chair chairman of the City Council's Contracting Oversight and Equity Committee when Ed Burke was charged with a crime back in 2019. He was forced by former Mayor Rahm Emanuel to step down as chairman of the Finance Committee. We'll see what the mayor does in this case.
So, former President Donald Trump suing Facebook, Twitter, and Google, claiming that he's been wrongfully censored. Take a look.
We're demanding an end to the shadow banning, a stop to the silencing, and a stop to the blacklisting, banishing, and canceling that you know so well. Our case will prove this censorship is unlawful, it's unconstitutional, and it's completely un-American.
Paris, does he have a case?
No, I don't think there's any legal expert that says there's a case. In fact, if a court were somehow to rule that Facebook or Twitter couldn't do what they did in enacting that ban, it would probably violate those companies' First Amendment rights to institute their own rules of engagement and then have folks abide by them. So it's important to look at this. You know, the former president has a history throughout his career of countersuing and suing. You know, a fundraising pitch went out right after this lawsuit was filed. So it's more of a public relations strategy, a marketing strategy to get some more money into the coffers, to stoke the base, to keep his name in the news on a hot button issue as he debates about what he does in 2024.
And Amanda, is this a distraction?
Wouldn't you love to see him oh, sorry, I was just going to say, wouldn't you love to see him give a deposition in that case?
Yeah, I mean, discovery might reveal a whole lot of things, so it's like, be careful what you wish for.
Well, I mean, you know, to that end, Amanda, you know, is this a distraction from, you know, the Trump organization's, you know, actual legal woes? There were, you know, his CFO, Alan Weisselberg, was indicted last week. We might be hearing from the president, but Amanda, is this a distraction?
You know, it might be a distraction. I, again, spoke with a lot of supporters of President Trump just today here in Crystal Lake, who very much believe that the election was stolen from him. They were carrying Trump 2024 flags. So among his supporters, I'm not sure that anybody will be particularly swayed, is leaving the Trump train because of the lawsuit that is facing him on the business side of things. So if it's meant to be a distraction, I'm not sure how well that would work. Again, maybe more of a fundraising ploy, particularly as he does face these issues on the business side of things and legal ramifications that could hurt him financially.
So, Heather, Chicago's pension debt rose by over $1 billion last year. Now Chicago owes almost $33 billion to its 4 employee pension funds. What does this mean?
Well, it means that Chicago is going to have to dig very deep for the next couple of years. This is all happening because the city is now having to comply with a state law that sort of puts these pension plans on a schedule to get to a better funded level to ensure that they can pay pensions to employees as they retire. The hard truth is that this was expected. I spoke with finance officials who said, yep, this was what we expected. This is what it's going to cost. But it's one of the reasons that the city is facing such a steep financial or bad financial situation, which has really only been alleviated a little bit by the federal aid coming from the government for the COVID-19 pandemic. Mayor Lightfoot has said repeatedly that she wants changes to how pensions are paid, but that's not likely to happen anytime soon. So the city is just going to have to meet these bills, and that could potentially mean more tax hikes and a potential reduction in services. You know, it's a zero-sum game. You either raise revenue, cut spending, or borrow money, and the city has really borrowed as much money as it can at this point, so its options are limited.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks to the Spotlight Politics team, Matt Masterson, Heather Sharon, Amanda Vinicky, and Paris Schutz.